Glass shattered against marble floor, the sound echoing through the $10 million penthouse like a gunshot. "Get out," Victoria said, her voice trembling but determined. "I said get out of my house, Richard." "Your house," Richard Morrison slurred, whiskey heavy on his breath. "Everything you have is because of me. You're nothing without my money." Victoria Chen Morrison pressed her hand protectively over her 7 months pregnant belly, feeling the twins shift inside her. Rain pelted the floor-to-ceiling windows of their Manhattan home, matching the storm brewing in her chest. At 38 years old, she had spent 16 years of her life with this man, watching him transform from charming entrepreneur to the angry stranger swaying before her now. "Richard, please," she said, backing toward the kitchen island. "You're drunk. Just go to the guest room and we'll talk in the morning. Don't tell me what to do." He stepped closer, his designer shoes crunching on the broken glass. "You cost me $50 million today. $50 million. That deal fell through because you had to announce your pregnancy at the worst possible time?" Victoria's mind reeled. "The deal fell through because you gambled away the investment capital." "Richard, I saw the casino receipts." His face darkened, a familiar sight that still made her stomach clench. "You went through my office." "It's my home too," she said quietly. "Or have you forgotten that my home, my money, my rules?" He was close enough now that she could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes, the way his jaw clenched and unclenched. "And my wife doesn't snoop through my private papers like some common—" "Like what? Richard, say it." Victoria lifted her chin, exhaustion overriding fear. "Like the woman who gave up her career for you, who went through 5 years of IVF treatments while you blame me for not getting pregnant, who smiled at your business dinners while you introduced me as your exotic Asian trophy." The slap came without warning. The sharp crack of palm against cheek filled the penthouse, followed immediately by Victoria's gasp as she stumbled backward. Her hips struck the marble counter hard, and she felt herself falling, her hands instinctively wrapping around her belly as she went down. "Senor Richard." "No, the babies." Maria's scream came from the hallway where the 60-year-old housekeeper had been folding laundry. Victoria hit the floor hard, pain shooting through her side. She tasted copper in her mouth and felt wetness on her cheek, tears or blood. She wasn't sure. Above her, Richard's face shifted from rage to something else. Fear, maybe, or just annoyance at being caught. "Victoria, honey, I didn't mean to." He reached down, but she flinched away. "Don't touch me," she whispered, then louder. "Don't you dare touch me." Maria was already on the phone, her accented English urgent. "Yes, police. Please come quickly. 245 Park Avenue, Penthouse A. A pregnant woman has been assaulted." "You stupid woman." Richard turned on Maria. "You're fired. Get out of my house." "No," Victoria said from the floor, her voice stronger now. "She stays. You leave." She realized as she lay there with her cheek throbbing and her babies kicking frantically inside her, that this wasn't the first time. The shoves that seemed accidental, the grabbed wrists that left bruises she covered with designer bracelets, the thrown objects that always barely missed, they had all been leading to this moment. But unlike all those other times, she wasn't alone. Maria had seen. Maria had called for help. And for the first time in years, Victoria felt something other than fear. She felt ready. The elevator chimed, and 2 police officers emerged into the penthouse. Officer Rodriguez, according to his badge, knelt beside Victoria while his partner stood between her and Richard. "Ma'am, are you safe now?" Officer Rodriguez asked gently. "My babies," Victoria managed. "I need to know my babies are okay." "We'll get you to the hospital right away. Can you tell me what happened?" Richard's voice boomed across the room. "Officers, this is a misunderstanding. My wife is hormonal, you know how pregnant women get. I'm Richard Morrison of Morrison Tech. Perhaps you've heard of me. I donate generously to the NYPD fund every year." "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back," the second officer said firmly. Victoria looked up at Officer Rodriguez. "He hit me. My husband hit me, and I fell." The words felt strange in her mouth, like speaking a foreign language. I want to press charges. You can't be serious, Richard laughed, but it was hollow. Victoria, tell them this is ridiculous. She thought about all the time she'd covered for him, all the excuses she'd made, all the years she'd wasted believing he would change. As the EMTs arrived and began checking her vitals, Victoria made a decision that would change everything. I'm completely serious, she said, her voice carrying across the penthouse. I want to press charges against my millionaire husband for assault, and I want a divorce. 3 days earlier, Victoria had believed her marriage was salvageable. She sat in her psychiatrist's office, hands folded over her growing belly, trying to explain why she'd missed her last 2 appointments. Dr. Patricia Kemp waited patiently, her warm brown eyes encouraging but not pushing. Richard's been under a lot of stress, Victoria said, the words automatic after years of practice. The tech market has been volatile, and he's trying to close this major deal. He needs me to be supportive right now. And what do you need, Victoria? Dr. Kemp asked. The question hung in the air like morning mist. What did she need? Victoria couldn't remember the last time someone had asked her that. She thought back to when it all began, desperate to understand how she'd gotten here. She'd been 22, fresh out of Harvard Business School, ready to conquer Wall Street. The networking event at the Ritz-Carlton had been packed with finance's brightest minds. But Richard Morrison had stood out, not just because of his 6'2" frame or his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, but because of the way he looked at her. You're not like the other girls here, he'd said, appearing at her elbow with 2 champagne flutes. You actually understand what derivative trading means? She'd laughed, flattered. That's a pretty low bar for impressive. I'm Richard Morrison, he'd said, as if she should know the name. Morrison Tech. We're about to go public. She did know the name. Everyone in finance knew Morrison Tech was the next big thing. And here was its CEO, 15 years her senior, looking at her like she was the only person in the room. He called me his Asian princess, Victoria told Dr. Kemp, wincing at the memory. Said I was exotic, a perfect mix of brains and beauty. I thought it was romantic then. I was young and stupid. The whirlwind courtship had lasted 6 months. Richard had swept her off her feet with private jet trips to Paris, diamonds from Tiffany's, and promises of a partnership in both love and business. He'd introduced her to his circle powerful men with younger wives who lunched at Bergdorf's and summered in the Hamptons. You're too good for Goldman Sachs, he'd told her after she'd received her job offer. Why work 18-hour days for someone else when you could help me build an empire? The warning signs had been there, Victoria realized now. The way he'd insisted she change her outfit when he thought it was too revealing. How he'd sulked when she'd beaten him at tennis at the country club. The joke he'd made about her Yale MBA friend Marcus being too friendly at their engagement party. He was protective, she said to Dr. Kemp. At least, and that's what I told myself. He just loved me so much he wanted me all to himself. They'd married at the St. Regis, 400 guests watching as Victoria walked down the aisle in a Vera Wang gown that Richard had chosen. Her parents had flown in from San Francisco, overwhelmed by the opulence. Her younger sister Sarah, then only 18, had whispered, "Vicky, are you sure about this?" right before the music started. I was sure, Victoria said. I was marrying a millionaire who adored me. What could go wrong? Everything. As it turned out, the control had tightened slowly, like a silk scarf being pulled incrementally tighter around her throat. First, Richard suggested she leave Goldman Sachs to help with Morrison Tech's IPO. Just temporarily, he'd said. Then, after the successful public offering, he'd convinced her to manage their charitable foundation instead. We need to give back, he'd said, and you're so good with people. Year by year, her world had shrunk. Friends from business school stopped calling after Richard had made scenes at dinners. Her trips home to see her parents became less frequent. Your family makes me uncomfortable, he'd said. They don't understand our lifestyle. When did he first hit you, Doctor? Kemp asked gently. Victoria's hand went to her stomach. He didn't. Not really. Not until 3 days ago. Violence doesn't always mean hitting. Victoria. The memories flooded back. The wine glass thrown at the wall next to her head during an argument about her spending. The time he'd grabbed her wrist so hard it left bruises when she tried to leave during a fight. The shove that sent her into the bookshelf when she'd suggested marriage counseling. 5 years ago, she admitted, we'd been trying to get pregnant for 3 years. The fertility treatments were brutal. I was hormonal, exhausted, desperate. When the fourth IVF cycle failed, he said it was my fault. Said I was too stressed, too focused on the wrong things. He grabbed my shoulders and shook me, screaming that I was failing him as a wife. What happened then? I apologized. The words tasted bitter. I actually apologized to him, said I'd try harder, relax more. We did 2 more cycles. Both failed. Victoria remembered the night after the 6th failed attempt. Richard had come home from a business dinner, drunk and angry about some deal. She'd been crying on the bathroom floor, grieving another lost chance at motherhood. Maybe it's for the best, he'd slurred. You'd probably be a terrible mother anyway. Look how emotional you are. That was the night she'd first thought about leaving. But where would she go? She'd been out of finance for over a decade. Her resume had a massive gap. Richard controlled all their finances, doled out her allowance like she was a child. And the shame the shame of admitting her perfect life was a lie. Then, 3 months ago, a miracle happened, Victoria continued. Natural conception. Twins. I thought it would fix everything. Dr. Kemp's expression remained neutral. How did Richard react? He was thrilled. At first, threw a huge party, invited everyone we knew, posted about it on social media. Morrison Tech CEO expecting twins at 55. But then, he started saying things. How the pregnancy was making me fat. How I needed to be careful not to embarrass him at events. How the babies better be boys because Morrison men produce heirs, not daughters. When we found out they were girls, he didn't speak to me for 3 days. Victoria stood, pacing to the window. Park Avenue stretched below. Taxis and town cars ferrying important people to important places. She'd once been one of those people. He's been losing money, she said. I wasn't supposed to know, but Maria tells me things. She's been with us for 5 years, sees everything. Richard's been gambling. Not just poker games with his buddies, but real gambling. Casinos, online betting, cryptocurrency speculation. He lost 30 million last month alone. Maria sounds like a good friend. She's more than that. Victoria's voice caught. She's the only person who sees what my life really is. She holds me when I cry, helps me hide the bruises, tells me I deserve better in her broken English that's more eloquent than any speech I've ever heard. The intercom buzzed. Dr. Kemp, your 4 o'clock is here. Victoria glanced at the clock, startled. The session was over. As always, time in this safe space moved too quickly. Victoria, Dr. Kemp said as she gathered her purse, I want you to think about something. You've spent 16 years managing Richard's emotions, predicting his moods, making yourself smaller to avoid his anger. What would happen if you stopped? I can't, Victoria said automatically. I'm 7 months pregnant with twins. Where would I go? What would I do? Those are practical concerns we can address. I'm asking something different. What would happen if you decided you deserved better? Victoria left the office with those words echoing in her mind. As her driver navigated the Manhattan traffic, she thought about her sister Sarah, now 34 and a successful pediatrician in Boston. Sarah, who still asked at every phone call, Vicky, are you happy? She thought about her parents, getting older in their modest Sunset District home, always deflecting when she offered to buy them something nicer. We don't need your husband's money, her mother would say carefully. She thought about the woman she'd been at 22, brilliant and ambitious and ready to take on the world. That woman wouldn't recognize the person she'd become soft-spoken, carefully made up to hide exhaustion, an expert at reading her husband's moods and adjusting accordingly. As the car pulled up to their building, Victoria made a decision. She would start keeping a journal, document everything, just in case. She had no idea that just in case was only 3 days away. The Morrison Foundation's annual gala at the Plaza Hotel was the social event of the season, and Victoria had learned to play her part perfectly. She stood beside Richard in a custom Carolina Herrera gown that tastefully concealed her baby bump, her smile as precisely applied as her makeup. "Victoria, darling, you're glowing." Bitsy Pembroke air-kissed her cheeks, diamonds glittering at her throat. "Pregnancy suits you so well. Although I must say, twins at your age. How brave." "Thank you, Bitsy," Victoria replied smoothly, having learned that explaining she was only 38 would be seen as defensive. "We're very blessed." Richard's hand tightened on her lower back. A warning. He leaned in, all charm. "Bitsy, have you met Senator Walsh? He's very interested in your husband's environmental initiatives." As Bitsy fluttered away, Richard's whisper was sharp. "Stop fidgeting. You're making me look bad." "I'm not fidgeting. The babies are just active tonight." "Well, control them. This is important." Across the ballroom, Victoria caught sight of Helen Walker, elegant in emerald green despite being 62. Helen had been Richard's first investor and remained on Morrison Tech's board. More importantly, she'd become something like a friend over the years, though Richard discouraged their relationship. "Honey, that smile doesn't reach your eyes," Helen said when she approached, her southern drawl soft with concern. "You feeling all right?" "Just tired," Victoria said. "You know how it is." Helen's keen gaze missed nothing. "I do know. Lord, do I know? Come on, let's get you sitting down. Richard can handle his glad handing without you for 5 minutes." They found a quiet corner table, and Helen immediately flagged a waiter for sparkling water. Up close, Victoria could see the fine lines around her friend's eyes, the slight tremor in her hands that she hid well. "How are you really, sugar?" Helen asked. "I'm fine. Richard's just stressed about—" "I didn't ask about Richard. I asked about you." The simple distinction made Victoria's eyes water. She blinked rapidly, mindful of her mascara. "I'm managing—" Helen reached across the table and took her hand. "I recognize that look. Honey, I wore it for 15 years. Right up until my husband backhanded me at the governor's mansion during a fundraiser." Victoria's shock must have shown because Helen laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Oh yes, even us Southern belles have our secrets. Harold was a judge, respected by everyone. Also mean as a snake when he drank, which was every night. I stayed because that's what women did in 1985. Stayed and smiled and made excuses." "What changed?" Victoria asked quietly. "He made the mistake of doing it in front of our daughter. She was 12, and the look on her face, I realized I was teaching her this was normal. Left him that night. Took nothing but Amy and the clothes on our backs. Best decision I ever made." Before Victoria could respond, a commotion near the bar drew their attention. Jennifer Kim, one of Manhattan's top divorce attorneys, was in heated discussion with a client. Her rapid-fire speech carried even over the orchestra. "Absolutely not accepting that prenup interpretation. We'll file in New York, not Connecticut, and we'll seek full forensic accounting." "That's Jennifer Kim," Helen said thoughtfully. "She handled my niece's divorce. Took her ex-husband for everything he had, and he deserved it. Woman's a barracuda in Louboutins." Victoria watched the attorney work, noting her confidence, her refusal to be intimidated by the men trying to talk over her. What would it be like to have someone like that in her corner? Victoria Richards' voice cut through her thoughts. "There you are. Come on. It's time for the announcement." She rose carefully, the twins protesting the movement. Helen squeezed her hand once more. "You know where to find me, honey, day or night." On stage, Richard transformed into his public persona, charming, philanthropic, the tech visionary who cared about giving back. Victoria stood beside him, one hand on her belly, as he announced their pregnancy to the assembled crowd. "My beautiful wife and I are expecting twins." He beamed, pulling her closer. "The next generation of Morrisons. Coming this fall." The applause was thunderous. Champagne flutes raised in their honor. Victoria smiled and waved, playing the part of the ecstatic mother-to-be. Inside, she felt hollow. During his speech about the foundation's achievements, Victoria's attention wandered. She spotted her sister Sarah near the dessert table, looking uncomfortable in her borrowed cocktail dress. Sarah had driven down from Boston specifically for this event. Knowing Victoria needed support, their eyes met, and Sarah mouthed, "You okay?" Victoria nodded automatically, then caught herself, slowly, deliberately. She shook her head. Sarah's face hardened. She began making her way through the crowd. "And of course, none of this would be possible without my darling wife," Richard was saying. "Victoria gave up her own career to support mine, and now she's giving me the greatest gift of all fatherhood. Although," he chuckled, "I do hope she hasn't passed on too many of those emotional female genes to our daughters." The crowd laughed. Victoria felt sick. After the speeches, she escaped to the ladies' room, where Sarah was waiting. "Vicky, what's going on? You look miserable." "I'm fine." "Stop it." Sarah grabbed her shoulders gently. "You haven't returned my calls in weeks. You're losing weight everywhere except your belly. And I saw how he grabbed you during the photos, like you were property." "Sarah, please, not here." "Then where you never let me visit anymore. Mom and Dad are worried sick. We all are." Victoria's composure finally cracked. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "But I don't know how to leave. He controls everything. The money, the house, even my car is in his name. And now with the babies." Sarah pulled her into a fierce hug. "You're brilliant. Vicky, you graduated summa cum laude from Harvard. You're not trapped, you're just scared. There's a difference. Sometimes I think I'm going crazy. He's never actually hit me. Just other things. Things that don't leave marks." "Abuse doesn't require bruises," Sarah said firmly. "And you know what? Even if you were going crazy, it would be his fault. This is what they do. They make you doubt yourself until you can't trust your own feelings." The bathroom door opened, and Bitsy Pembroke entered with two other society wives. Their chatter died when they saw Victoria's tears. "Pregnancy hormones," Victoria said brightly, dabbing at her eyes. "You know how it is." After they left, Sarah lowered her voice. "I'm staying at the Marriott tonight, room 1215. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. Promise." "I promise." They returned to the party separately. Victoria found Richard holding court with potential investors, regaling them with stories of his business acumen. She knew from the bank statements she'd glimpsed that Morrison Tech was hemorrhaging money, but you'd never know it from his confident performance. "There's my beautiful wife." He pulled her into the circle. "Gentlemen, Victoria used to work at Goldman Sachs." "Of course. That was before she realized her true calling was supporting me." More laughter. "Now she's about to discover her most important job, yet raising the next generation of tech innovators." "Actually," Victoria heard herself say, "I'm hoping they'll be whoever they want to be. Maybe doctors like their Aunt Sarah, or teacher, or artists." Richard's smile tightened. "Of course, darling. Though we know business is in their blood." The investor to her left, an older man with kind eyes, turned to her. "Goldman Sachs. You said which division?" "Mergers and acquisitions," Victoria replied, feeling a spark of her old self. "I specialized in tech sector valuations." "Impressive. The industry could use more diverse perspectives. Have you thought about returning after the children are born?" "Oh, Victoria's done with all that." Richard interrupted. "Aren't you, darling, you've said yourself that motherhood will be your full-time job." "I don't recall saying that." Victoria said quietly. The investor looked between them, clearly sensing tension. Well, the industry's loss is your family's gain. I'm sure. Later, as they waited for their car, Richard's mask finally slipped. What the hell was that? He hissed. Contradicting me in front of investors. I wasn't contradicting you. I was having a conversation. You were embarrassing me. Again, just like you embarrassed me by getting fat, by crying at the Pembrokes dinner, by inviting your low-class sister to my gala. Our gala, Victoria corrected, for our foundation. My money, my foundation, my gala. You'd do well to remember that. The car arrived, and they rode home in silence. Victoria stared out at the city lights, thinking about Helen's story, about Jennifer Kim's confidence, about Sarah waiting at the Marriott. She thought about the woman she used to be and the woman she'd become. How many women smile through fancy dinners while dying inside? The thought came unbidden, and with it, a terrible certainty. She wasn't unique. All over this glittering city, in penthouses and brownstones and luxury condos, women like her were trapped in golden cages, smiling for the cameras while their spirits died a little more each day. But Helen had escaped. Others had too. Maybe, just maybe, she could join them. The penthouse was dark when they arrived. Maria had left a light on in the kitchen, along with a note. Soup in refrigerator if you're hungry. Senora Victoria. Richard poured himself a scotch, his fourth of the evening. I have calls to make. Don't wait up. Victoria climbed the stairs slowly, her feet aching in designer heels, her heart aching with something harder to define. In her walk-in closet, behind a row of evening gowns, she found the journal she'd started 3 days ago. She wrote quickly, documenting the evening's events, Richard's words, her own growing certainty that something had to change. As she wrote, the twins kicked and rolled inside her. I know, babies, she whispered. I know, Mommy's going to figure this out. I promise. She had no idea that in less than 72 hours, Richard would make that decision for her. The rain hadn't stopped since morning. Victoria stood at the penthouse window, watching water streak down the glass, distorting the city below. The twins had been restless all day, responding perhaps to her own anxiety. Richard had been locked in his office since breakfast, emerging only to bark orders at Maria or demand coffee. She knew about the deal. Of course, Morrison Tech's acquisition of a smaller competitor meant to shore up their flagging stock price. $50 million that Richard had assured investors was already secured. What they didn't know was that $30 million of it had disappeared into cryptocurrency speculation and online poker. Leaving a gap Richard had been scrambling to fill. Her phone buzzed. Helen's text was brief. Saw the news about Morrison Tech stock dropping. You okay? Before she could reply, Richard's office door slammed open. Where is it? He demanded, storming into the living room. Where's what? The Cartier watch. The one I bought for Senator Walsh. It's not in my office safe. Victoria set down her tea carefully. You gave it to him last month at the club. Remember, for his birthday. Don't tell me what I remember. Spittle flew from his mouth. You took it. You've been taking things, moving things, trying to make me look crazy. Richard, I haven't touched your safe. I don't even know the combination. He laughed, an ugly sound. Right. Just like you don't know about my private finances. Just like you didn't hire someone to spy on me. The accusation was so absurd, Victoria almost laughed. Spy on you, Richard. I'm 7 months pregnant with twins. I can barely make it to my doctor's appointments. The deal fell through. He said it quietly, but she could see the rage building behind his eyes. $50 million. Gone. Because of you. How is it because of me? You jinxed it. He threw his tumbler against the wall, scotch and crystal shards exploding across white marble. Everything was fine until you got pregnant. The company was thriving. I was winning. And then you had to go and get pregnant with your children. Victoria stood, anger finally overriding fear. After 5 years of you blaming me for not getting pregnant. I never wanted kids, he roared. I wanted a wife who'd shut up and look pretty and not ask questions about where the money went. And where did it go? Richard, to the Bellagio, to your crypto gambling, to that 25-year-old Instagram model whose apartment you're paying for? His face went white, then red. You bitch, you've been going through my things. I didn't have to. You left your laptop open. Your emails were right there. All of it the gambling, the affairs, the debts you've been hiding from the board. Those are lies. Really, should we call Amber and ask her? Or maybe the casino hosts who keep comping your suites? Or the crypto broker who's been calling the house? She saw his hand move but didn't believe it would connect. Even after everything, some part of her still believed he wouldn't cross that final line. The slap snapped her head sideways, pain exploding across her cheek. The force of it, combined with her shifted center of gravity from the pregnancy, sent her stumbling backward. Her hip caught the marble counter edge hard, and then she was falling, her hands desperately trying to protect her belly as the floor rushed up to meet her. She hit hard, her shoulder taking the brunt of the impact, but her stomach still struck the floor with a terrifying thud. Pain shot through her side, and the twins went wild, kicking frantically. "Senor Richard, no, the babies." Maria's scream came from the hallway where she'd been listening, afraid to leave Victoria alone with him. Victoria tasted blood, felt the warmth of it on her lip. Her cheek throbbed, already swelling. But worse than the physical pain was the final shattering of any illusion she'd held about her marriage. Richard stood over her, his face cycling through emotions, rage to fear to calculation. "Victoria, honey, I didn't mean to get up. You're fine. Stop being dramatic." "Don't touch me," she whispered, then found her voice. "Don't you dare touch me." Maria was already on the phone, her accented English urgent but clear. "Yes, police, please come quickly. 245 Park Avenue, Penthouse A. A pregnant woman has been assaulted. Yes, I saw everything. Please hurry." "You stupid woman," Richard rounded on Maria. "You're fired. Get out of my house. I'll have you deported." "No!" Victoria pushed herself up on one elbow, her other hand pressed to her belly, feeling for movement. "She stays. You leave. This is my house. And I'm your pregnant wife who you just assaulted." Her voice grew stronger with each word. Maria witnessed it. The security cameras recorded it. "You leave now, or you explain to the police why you hit a pregnant woman." The elevator chimed, remarkably fast response time for even this neighborhood. Two officers emerged, taking in the scene: the broken glass, the scotch on the walls, Victoria on the floor with a rapidly bruising face, Maria standing protectively nearby. "Ma'am, are you safe now?" Officer Rodriguez knelt beside her, his partner keeping Richard in sight. "My babies," Victoria managed, fear cutting through shock. "I fell hard. I need to know they're okay. We'll get you to the hospital right away. Can you tell me what happened?" "Officers, this is a misunderstanding," Richard interrupted, his public persona sliding into place. "My wife is hormonal, you know how pregnant women get. She tripped. That's all. I'm Richard Morrison of Morrison Tech. Perhaps you've heard of me. I donate generously to the NYPD fund every year." "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back," the second officer said firmly, "and remain quiet while we talk to your wife." Victoria looked up at Officer Rodriguez, seeing kindness in his eyes. "He hit me. My husband hit me. And I fell." The words felt strange but necessary. "I want to press charges." "You can't be serious." Richard laughed, but she heard the edge of panic. "Victoria, tell them this is ridiculous. Think about what you're doing. Think about your future." "I am thinking about my future," she said steadily, "and my daughter's futures. I want to press charges against my millionaire husband for assault, and I want a divorce." "You'll get nothing," Richard snarled, his mask finally dropping completely. "I'll bury you in court. You signed a prenup. You'll be on the street with those brats." "Sir, that's enough." The second officer moved forward. "I'm going to need you to come with us." "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. I want my lawyer." "You can call your lawyer from the station." Officer Rodriguez said calmly. Ma'am, the EMTs are on their way up. We'll need to take photographs of your injuries and get your statement. Maria stepped forward. I saw everything. Officer, everything. And not just tonight. I have photos, dates. I write everything down. Victoria looked at her housekeeper in shock. Maria met her gaze steadily. Senora Victoria, you saved my family when you sponsor my visa. Now I save you. The EMTs arrived, checking Victoria's vitals, examining her belly with gentle hands. We need to get you to the hospital, one said. The babies need to be monitored, and that cheek needs x-rays. As they helped her onto a stretcher, Victoria saw Richard being led away in handcuffs. He was still blustering about lawsuits and connections, but the officers remained unmoved. Mrs. Morrison. Officer Rodriguez walked beside her stretcher. Here's my card. A detective will meet you at the hospital to take your full statement. And ma'am, you did the right thing. In the ambulance, with sirens wailing and rain still pounding the windows, Victoria felt the twins move. Weak at first, then stronger. She sobbed with relief. You're going to be okay, the EMT assured her. You and your babies are going to be just fine. Victoria thought about Helen's story, about leaving with nothing but her daughter and the clothes on her back. She thought about Sarah, waiting by her phone in Boston. She thought about the woman she'd been at 22, full of dreams and ambition. Yes, she said quietly. We're going to be just fine. At the hospital, the monitors showed steady heartbeats for both twins. The doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, documented every bruise, every scrape. The babies look good, she said, but I want to keep you overnight for observation. And Mrs. Morrison, I'm required to ask, has this happened before? Victoria thought about all the times she'd lied to doctors, dentists, friends, all the excuses she'd made, all the bruises she'd hidden. Yes, she admitted. Not like this, but yes. Dr. Patel squeezed her hand. We have resources, people who can help. You don't have to go through this alone. As they wheeled her to a room, Victoria's phone buzzed with messages. Sarah, on my way, caught the 10 p.m. train. Helen, saw the news alert. Don't worry about anything but those babies. And from a number she didn't recognize. Mrs. Morrison, this is Jennifer Kim. Helen Walker gave me your number. I'll be at the hospital first thing in the morning. Don't sign anything or agree to anything until we talk. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling safer in this hospital bed than she had in her $10 million penthouse. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and statements and the beginning of what would surely be an ugly battle. But tonight, she was free. Jennifer Kim arrived at the hospital at 7 a.m. sharp, looking immaculate despite the early hour. Her black suit was perfectly tailored, her documents organized in a leather portfolio that probably cost more than most people's rent. But it was her eyes that caught Victoria's attention, sharp, intelligent, and absolutely fearless. Helen Walker says you're the best, Victoria said by way of greeting. I am, Jennifer replied matter-of-factly, pulling up a chair. And you're going to need the best. Richard Morrison has already retained Kellerman, Frost, and Associates. They're good, but they're not me. She spread papers across the hospital tray table with practiced efficiency. First things first, criminal charges. The police have him on assault, but with Maria's testimony and documentation, we can establish a pattern of abuse that strengthens both the criminal case and our civil position. He'll destroy me, Victoria said quietly. He said so. The prenup becomes significantly less enforceable when there's documented abuse. Jennifer interrupted. Especially when you're pregnant. New York courts don't look kindly on millionaire husbands who beat their pregnant wives. Now tell me everything. Start from the beginning. For the next 2 hours, Victoria talked. Jennifer took notes in rapid shorthand, occasionally asking pointed questions. When Victoria mentioned the gambling, Jennifer's eyes lit up. Financial abuse, she said. Dissipation of marital assets. Do you have proof? I took photos of his laptop screen, bank statements, casino receipts, cryptocurrency transactions. They're on my phone. Smart. What else? There's an apartment. He's paying for a woman named Amber Chen, 25 years old, calls herself a model. Jennifer's smile was sharp. Infidelity and financial impropriety. Better and better. What about hidden assets? I don't know. He handles all the finances. I get an allowance $5,000 a month for personal expenses. Everything else goes through him. $5,000 a month. Jennifer looked disgusted. His company's valued at $200 million, and you get an allowance. We'll forensic audit everything. Offshore accounts, shell companies, hidden investments. If he's got it, we'll find it. The door opened, and Sarah burst in, still in yesterday's clothes. Vicky. Oh my God, your face. The bruise had bloomed overnight, purple and green across Victoria's cheekbone. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she gently hugged her sister. I'm okay, Victoria assured her. The babies are fine. That's what matters. That bastard, Sarah said fiercely. I'll kill him. Get in line, Jennifer said dryly. I'm Jennifer Kim, Victoria's attorney. You must be the sister. Sarah Chen, pediatrician, and ready to testify about every time that son of a... Sarah, Victoria squeezed her hand. This is Jennifer Kim. She's going to help us. Helen arrived an hour later with reinforcements, coffee, pastries, and a steely determination that reminded Victoria why she'd been so successful in business. I've already called an emergency board meeting, she announced. Richard Morrison assaulting his pregnant wife is not the kind of publicity Morrison Tech needs right now. The board will be very interested in distancing themselves. Can they force him out? Victoria asked. Honey, I've been building support for that for 2 years. This just gave me the ammunition I needed. By end of business today, Richard Morrison will no longer be CEO of Morrison Tech. Maria arrived next, clutching a worn notebook and a manila envelope. Senora Victoria, I bring everything. She documented 5 years of incidents, dates, times, descriptions, photos of broken objects, bruised wrists, torn clothing, a record of Richard's threats, his tantrums, his cruelty. Maria, Victoria breathed. How did you? My mother, she teach me, Maria said simply. She say, always protect yourself, always have proof. Men like Senor Richard, they think we invisible, but we see everything. Jennifer reviewed the notebook with growing satisfaction. This is gold. Maria, would you be willing to testify? Yes, he threatened to deport me, but I have green card now. Senora Victoria helped me get it. Now I help her. Dr. Patel entered for morning rounds. Good news, both babies look perfect. Strong heartbeats, good movement. I want one more ultrasound this afternoon. Then you can go home, Ma. That is, she won't be returning to the penthouse, Jennifer said firmly. We'll make other arrangements. You'll stay with me, Sarah said immediately. I've got a spare room in Boston. That's too far from her doctor's, Helen interjected. I have a guest suite, full security, private entrance. You'll stay with me until we sort out permanent housing. Victoria felt overwhelmed by the support. After years of isolation, suddenly she had an army. Now, Jennifer continued, let's talk strategy. Criminal charges are filed. The restraining order should be approved by noon. Richard won't be able to come within 500 feet of you. Next, we file for divorce on grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment. We'll seek temporary support, exclusive occupancy of the marital residence, and a freeze on marital assets to prevent him from hiding money. What about custody? Victoria asked, her hand on her belly. Full custody. No judge in New York is giving visitation to a man who assaulted the mother while pregnant. He might get supervised visits eventually, but that's a fight for another day. Victoria's phone rang. Richard's lawyer. Don't answer, Jennifer instructed. All communication goes through me now. She took the phone, answering coolly. Jennifer Kim, representing Victoria Morrison? Yes, I'm aware of the prenup. I'm also aware of your client's assault on a pregnant woman. No, she won't be dropping charges. No, she won't be returning to the residence. If Mr. Morrison would like to discuss settlement terms, he can have his attorney contact me during business hours. Good day. She hung up and immediately blocked the number. They'll try to contact you through other channels. Don't engage. Don't respond to texts, emails, nothing. Everything goes through me. What about the media? Helen asked. This will be news. Tech CEO arrested for domestic violence? They'll be all over it. We control the narrative, Jennifer said. I have a PR firm on retainer. We'll craft a statement emphasizing Victoria's pregnancy, her fear for her children's safety, and her courage in speaking out. We paint Richard as the unstable, gambling addict he is. He'll hate that, Victoria said quietly. Good, Jennifer, Sarah, and Helen said in unison. That afternoon, as Victoria was preparing for discharge, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Morrison Tech CEO Richard Morrison arrested on domestic violence charges. The story was already spreading. By evening, it would be on every financial news site. The man who'd controlled her narrative for 16 years was about to learn what it felt like to have his story told by others. You ready for this? Sarah asked, helping her pack. Victoria thought about the woman she'd been just days ago, trapped and terrified in her golden cage. That woman felt like a stranger now. I'm ready, she said, and meant it. As they left the hospital, Helen's car waiting outside, Victoria looked back once. Somewhere in this city, Richard was probably raging, planning his counterattack, marshaling his resources. Let him. She had resources too now. Better ones. The kind money couldn't buy, women who'd survived what she was facing, who knew the way forward. Where to, ladies? Helen's driver asked. Home, Helen said. We're going home. And for the first time in years, Victoria felt like she actually had one. 2 weeks after the arrest, Victoria sat in the waiting room of her obstetrician's office, trying to ignore the whispers. She recognized the two women by the water cooler wives of Richard's business associates, women she'd smiled at during countless charity functions. Did you hear about the Morrison divorce? The blonde one, Cecily something, didn't bother lowering her voice. She's claiming abuse. After 16 years. Please. Gold digger, her companion agreed. She saw the company struggling and decided to cash out. Poor Richard. Victoria kept her eyes on her pregnancy book, but the words blurred. She'd known this would happen. Jennifer had warned her. He'll control the narrative with his circle, she'd said. Let them talk. We'll win where it matters in court. But knowing didn't make it easier. Dr. Patel called her back, took one look at her face, and closed the door firmly. How are you really doing? The babies are moving well, Victoria deflected. No more cramping. That's not what I asked. Victoria's composure cracked. He's telling everyone I'm crazy, that pregnancy hormones made me unstable. He's got a PR firm painting me as a gold digger who trapped him with babies, then fabricated abuse claims. You know that's not true. How do I? Victoria laughed bitterly. Sometimes I wake up and think maybe I did overreact. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I should have... Stop! Dr. Patel's voice was firm. I documented your injuries. Multiple officers witnessed his behavior. Your housekeeper has 5 years of documentation. This is what abusers do. They make you doubt your own reality. Don't let him... The ultrasound showed 2 healthy girls, growing well despite the stress. Victoria watched them on the screen. These 2 little fighters who'd survived so much already. They're strong, Dr. Patel said. Like their mother. After the appointment, Victoria found 6 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. 3 voicemails from Richard's mother. Victoria, dear, this is Catherine Morrison. I'm sure this is all a terrible misunderstanding. Call me back so we can discuss this like civilized people. Think of the family name. The second was less pleasant. You ungrateful little, how dare you embarrass our family like this? Richard gave you everything. The third was a threat. You'll regret this. No one crosses the Morrisons? Victoria deleted them all and called Jennifer. Block her too, Jennifer advised, and document everything. These voicemails are evidence of harassment. She's the baby's grandmother. She's an enabler who raised an abuser. Your children don't need that in their lives. That evening, Helen's guest suite felt like a sanctuary. The security was excellent. Richard had tried to enter the building twice, both times turned away by doormen who had his photo. Sarah visited daily, bringing supplies and fierce loyalty. Boston General wants to know when you can interview, she mentioned over Chinese takeout. The chief of pediatric surgery is an old friend. She'd love to have someone with your background in hospital administration. I haven't worked in 16 years. Sarah, so you ran a multi-million-dollar foundation. You organized galas that raised hundreds of thousands. You managed staff, budgets, donors. That's experience. Richard always said charity work wasn't real work. Richard's an idiot, Sarah said flatly, and probably going to jail. Stop letting his voice live in your head. The next morning brought worse news. The page 6 headline screamed, Morrison's Secret Love Nest Tech, CEO's Mistress Tells All. Amber Chen had sold her story. The article painted Richard as a generous lover, trapped in a loveless marriage with a cold, calculating wife who'd baby-trapped him. She's 25, Victoria said numbly. He's 55. She's also lying, Jennifer said over the phone. I have receipts showing he paid her rent for 2 years. That's not a generous lover, that's a John. This actually helps us. How does this help? Everyone thinks everyone who matters knows better. The judge won't care about page 6. But Richard violating his own morals clause in the prenup, that matters? Still, the isolation was crushing. Victoria's phone had stopped ringing. The charity committees she'd served on sent polite emails suggesting she take some time for yourself. Friends who'd claimed to adore her vanished like smoke, except for a few. Patricia Wong, whose husband ran a hedge fund, called that afternoon. Victoria, I just wanted you to know, not everyone believes his lies. Some of us. Some of us have been where you are. If you need anything, please call. Similar messages trickled in. Women she'd barely known beyond surface pleasantries reached out with stories of their own. The network of survivors was larger than she'd ever imagined, hidden beneath the glossy surface of Manhattan society. But the legal battle was heating up. Richard's lawyer filed motion after motion, challenging the restraining order, demanding paternity tests, claiming Victoria was an unfit mother due to mental instability. Let him, Jennifer said during their strategy meeting. Every frivolous motion costs him money and makes him look worse. Meanwhile, our forensic accountant found something interesting. She spread documents across the table. $50 million. That's how much he's lost in the last year. But here's the interesting part. $30 million went to offshore accounts in the Caymans. He's not just gambling. He's hiding money. Can we prove it? Working on it. But Victoria, this means the company's in worse shape than anyone knows. Morrison Tech is about to implode. As if on cue, Victoria's phone buzzed. Helen calling. Emergency board meeting just ended, she said without preamble. Richard's out as CEO. The board voted no confidence. Stocks down 40%. Oh God, and the employees will be fine. The company will survive without him. But honey, he's going to be desperate now. Be extra careful. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. The twins were restless, responding to her anxiety. She paced Helen's guest suite, thinking about the employees who might lose their jobs, the investors who trusted Richard, the collateral damage of one man's ego. At 3 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. You've ruined everything. Richard's voice was slurred, angry. 16 years I gave you. 16 years. Richard, you're violating the restraining order. Shut up. You think you've won, I'll destroy you. You'll never see a penny. Those brats will grow up knowing their mother was a whore who... Victoria hung up and immediately called Jennifer, who called the police. By dawn, Richard was in custody again, his bail revoked. He threatened you while out on bail for assaulting you, Jennifer said with satisfaction. No judge will give him another chance. The news cycle exploded. Morrison Tech CEO jailed for violating restraining order. The stock price plummeted further. Board members distanced themselves. Business associates pretended they'd never been close. Victoria watched it all from Helen's guest room, feeling oddly detached. The man who'd controlled every aspect of her life for 16 years was self-destructing, and she was just a spectator now. How are you so calm? Sarah asked during her visit. Victoria thought about it, one hand on her belly. Because I already survived the worst thing. He hit me while I was pregnant. Everything else is just noise. She thought about all the times she'd asked permission to buy groceries, to see friends, to exist. The elaborate budgets she'd had to submit for household expenses while he blew millions on cards and women. The careful way she'd had to phrase requests to avoid triggering his anger. I spent 16 years managing his emotions, she said quietly, making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. Do you know I once canceled a lunch with you because he didn't like the restaurant I'd chosen, said it made him look cheap? I remember. You said you had a headache. I had a husband. Victoria laughed, but it was hollow. Same thing, really. The twins kicked, and she looked down at her belly. You hear that? Girls. Your mom made a joke, terrible one, but still, progress. Tomorrow would bring more battles. More motions, more mudslinging, more public humiliation. Richard would use every resource at his disposal to punish her for the crime of refusing to be his victim anymore. But tonight, she was safe. Her daughters were safe. And for now, that was enough. Maria Gonzalez sat across from Jennifer Kim in the law office conference room, her worn notebook open between them. 5 years of meticulous documentation spread across the table, like a roadmap of abuse. January 15, 2020, Maria read in accented but clear English. Senor Richard throw wine glass at wall next to Senora Victoria's head. She duck. Glass break. I save pieces in bag. Take photo. Jennifer leaned forward. You saved the glass. See, is in storage unit. I save everything. Victoria watched her housekeeper, her friend, with amazement. Maria, why didn't you ever tell me? What I say you no believe then. You love him. But I know one day you need proof. My mother, she work for bad man too. She teach me always document, always save evidence. Someday, it matter. Your mother was a wise woman, Jennifer said. Continue. For 3 hours they went through the notebook. Dates, times, incidents, photos of broken objects, screenshots of threatening texts Maria had seen on Victoria's phone, recordings she'd made on her phone when arguments got loud. Is legal? Maria asked anxiously. The recordings. New York is a one-party consent state, Jennifer explained. You were present for these conversations as a household employee. It's admissible. She played one recording. Richard's voice filled the room, slurred and vicious. You're nothing without me, Victoria. Nothing I made you. I own you. You think anyone else would want a used-up 38-year-old who can't even get pregnant without help? Victoria's quiet response was barely audible. Please, Richard, you're drunk. Let's talk tomorrow. Don't tell me I'm drunk. You're the problem. Always whining, always needing attention. Maybe if you were a better wife, I wouldn't need to. A crash interrupted the recording, followed by Victoria's gasp. He threw laptop, Maria explained. Almost hit her. I was in hallway, cleaning. I see everything. By the time they finished, Jennifer had 63 documented incidents over 5 years. The pattern was clear: escalating violence, financial control, emotional abuse. "This is a prosecutor's dream," Jennifer said. "Maria, you may have just guaranteed Victoria full custody and a significant settlement." That afternoon, another breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Victoria's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Ellen Carpenter. I was Richard's first wife." Victoria's breath caught. "Ellen, I heard about what happened, about the arrest. I wanted you to know you're not alone. And if you need me to testify about Richard's patterns, I will." They met the next day at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, away from Manhattan's prying eyes. Ellen was 53, elegant in an understated way, with kind eyes that held old pain. "I was 22 when I met him," Ellen began. "He was 35, successful, charming. I was a paralegal at his law firm. The romance was overwhelming: flowers, jewelry, promises of a perfect life." "That sounds familiar," Victoria said quietly. "The control started small, comments about my clothes, my friends. Then he convinced me to quit working. Why be a paralegal when you can be a CEO's wife? By year 3, I needed permission to leave the house." Ellen's story was eerily similar to Victoria's. The financial control, the isolation, the gradual escalation of violence. "The first time he hit me, I was holding our son," Ellen said, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "James was 2. Richard backhanded me for contradicting him at a dinner party, and I almost dropped our baby." "You have a son." Victoria hadn't known Richard had other children. "James is 20 now. Richard hasn't seen him since the divorce. Signed away parental rights for a reduction in child support." Ellen's smile was bitter. "Best thing that ever happened to my son. Why didn't anyone warn me?" Ellen looked down. "The NDA, the divorce agreement, included a non-disclosure clause. If I spoke about the abuse, I'd lose everything: the settlement, the house, James's college fund. But when I saw the news, saw you were pregnant, I couldn't stay silent anymore." "The NDA won't hold up against criminal testimony," Jennifer assured her when they called from the cafe. "You can testify without losing your settlement." Ellen agreed to provide a sworn affidavit about Richard's pattern of abuse. Her documentation, while not as extensive as Maria's, showed the same escalation over time. Meanwhile, the forensic accountant Jennifer had hired was uncovering financial bombshells. "He's been bleeding money for 3 years." Robert Chen, no relation to Victoria, explained during their meeting. "Not just the gambling, though that's extensive. He's been taking loans against the company, hiding them through shell corporations. Morrison Tech is essentially bankrupt. But the house, the cars, the lifestyle, all leveraged. The penthouse has 3 mortgages. The cars are leased. The art collection he brags about fake. He sold the originals 2 years ago and replaced them with reproductions." Victoria felt the room spin. "So there's no money." "There's money hidden offshore. We've traced at least 30 million to accounts in the Caymans and Switzerland, but accessing it will take time." "What about my daughter's future? Their college funds?" "Non-existent. He's been living on credit and reputation for years." The revelation should have devastated her. Instead, Victoria felt oddly liberated. The golden cage had been an illusion all along. That evening, Helen found her in the guest suite, organizing baby clothes Sarah had brought. "Heard about the financials," Helen said gently. "How are you holding up?" "You know what's strange? I feel relieved. All these years, I felt guilty about the money he spent on me, the designer clothes, the jewelry. I thought I owed him for that. But it was all fake, just like our marriage. The clothes and jewelry might have been bought on credit, but the abuse was real," Helen reminded her. "Don't let this minimize what you've been through." I'm just, I spent 16 years being grateful for a lifestyle built on lies. I gave up my career, my independence, my self-worth for a man who was playing with monopoly money." The irony wasn't lost on her. Richard Morrison, the millionaire tech CEO, was broke, but his abuse had been very real. Even if his wealth wasn't, the next morning brought another surprise. Jennifer called, excitement clear in her voice. Security footage, she said. The building's management company kept archives going back 5 years. They have external hallway cameras that captured several incidents, including Richard shoving you into your apartment after the Harrison Charity Gala in 2022. I remember that night. I'd talked to a male donor for too long. Richard was furious. Well, now we have video. Between this, Maria's documentation, Ellen's testimony, and the recorded threats, Richard doesn't stand a chance. As if to prove her point, Richard's lawyer called that afternoon, requesting a meeting. They want to settle, Jennifer reported after the call. They know we have them cornered. What are they offering? Not enough. But the fact they're offering anything means they're scared. We hold all the cards now. That night, Victoria felt the twins having hiccups, a rhythmic bumping that made her smile. She was 34 weeks pregnant now, her belly huge, her ankles swollen. But for the first time in years, she felt strong. Your daddy's in trouble, girls, she whispered to her bump. But you know what, we're going to be just fine without him. Better, even. You'll grow up seeing your mama stand up for herself. You'll never think it's normal for someone who claims to love you to hurt you. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that somehow got through her blocks. You think you've won, this isn't over? R. Victoria screenshotted it and forwarded it to Jennifer. More evidence, more proof of harassment, more nails in the coffin of Richard's defense. She thought about calling him pathetic, about feeling sorry for the man who'd lost everything through his own actions. But she didn't. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with the consequences. And she was finally free to make choices of her own. At 35 weeks pregnant, Victoria sat in Jennifer's office for what should have been a routine deposition. The court reporter was ready. Richard's lawyer, Albert Kellerman, adjusting his tie with practiced arrogance. State your name for the record, he began. Victoria Chen Morrison. She kept her voice steady despite the Braxton Hicks contractions she'd been having all morning. Mrs. Morrison, isn't it true that you trapped my client with this pregnancy? Jennifer objected immediately. Inflammatory and irrelevant? Goes to motive, Your Honor, Kellerman argued to the presiding referee. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, the referee warned. Victoria straightened. I underwent 5 years of fertility treatments to trap a man I was already married to. That's your theory. You knew the marriage was failing. You knew my client was considering divorce. A sharp pain cut through Victoria's abdomen, different from the practice contractions. She gripped the table edge, trying to breathe through it. Are you all right? Jennifer asked quietly. Another contraction hit, stronger. Wetness flooded between her legs. Oh God, my water just broke. The room erupted in chaos. Jennifer was already calling 911 while Kellerman sputtered about postponement. Victoria focused on breathing, her hands cradling her belly. Too early, she whispered. They're too early. 35 weeks is viable, Jennifer assured her, helping her stand. The twins will be fine. The ambulance ride was a blur of contractions and fear. Jennifer stayed with her, holding her hand, making calls. Sarah's on her way, Helen too, and security knows not to let Richard anywhere near the maternity ward. At the hospital, Dr. Patel met them at emergency. Let's see what these girls are up to, she said calmly, though Victoria saw the concern in her eyes. The examination confirmed it active labor, dilated to 6 centimeters already. These twins are coming today, Dr. Patel announced. Let's get you to delivery. In the birthing suite, Victoria gripped the bed rails through another contraction. I can't do this alone. You're not alone, Sarah said, bursting through the door still in her scrubs from surgery. I broke every speed limit getting here. Helen arrived minutes later. Security's all set. Richard tried to bluff his way in claiming father's rights. They escorted him out. Between contractions, Victoria almost laughed. Of course he had. Even now, he couldn't respect a boundary. Push, Dr. Patel instructed 2 hours later. Your first daughter is ready to meet you? Sophie emerged at 4 pounds, 2 ounces, screaming with healthy lungs. Emma followed 12 minutes later, smaller at 3 pounds, 10 ounces, but equally vocal. They're perfect, Victoria sobbed, a daughter in each arm. They're absolutely perfect. They'll need NICU time, Dr. Patel explained, but their vitals are strong. You did beautifully. As they wheeled the twins to NICU, Victoria's phone buzzed. Jennifer, who'd been coordinating security from the waiting room, texted Richard's lawyer just served papers. He's demanding immediate paternity tests. The audacity should have enraged her. Instead, Victoria felt only pity. While she was bringing life into the world, he was still focused on destruction. Let him, she told Jennifer when she visited. Test away. They're his daughters. Not that he deserves them. The NICU was quiet, machines beeping softly. Victoria sat between the two isolettes, watching her daughters sleep. Sophie had a shock of dark hair like her father, while Emma was nearly bald. Both had Victoria's delicate features. Hi, girls, she whispered. I'm your mama. I know we're meeting earlier than planned, but you're fighters, just like me. A commotion in the hallway caught her attention. Security was arguing with someone. I have a right to see them. Richard's voice carried through the door. They're my children. Sir, there's a restraining order. I don't care, those are my heirs. Victoria pressed the call button. Please, she told the nurse who responded. Don't let him near my babies. Hospital security and 2 police officers removed Richard from the premises. His lawyer filed an emergency motion demanding access, which was denied within hours. He showed up drunk, Jennifer reported. Security cameras caught him stumbling, slurring. The judge was not impressed. Over the next week, Victoria split her time between the NICU and Helen's guest suite. The twins grew stronger daily. Sophie was the first to breathe without oxygen support. Emma, though smaller, was fierce, gripping Victoria's finger with surprising strength. Maria visited daily, bringing home-cooked meals and prayers. They beautiful, Senora. Strong like their mama. The paternity test results came back, confirming what everyone knew: Richard was the biological father. His lawyer immediately filed for custody rights. Over my dead body, Jennifer said flatly. A man out on bail for assaulting their pregnant mother doesn't get custody of premature infants. The media had caught wind of the story. Tech CEO's twins born amid domestic violence case. Photographers lingered outside the hospital, hoping for shots of the babies or Victoria. Let them photograph, Helen advised. You leaving the hospital, bruise still visible. Tiny babies in NICU, it tells the real story, not the garbage Richard's PR team is spinning. Ellen Carpenter visited on day 4, bringing a stuffed elephant for each girl. James loved elephants, she said softly. I thought your girls might too. Did he want to be involved with James? For about 5 minutes. Then he realized babies cry and need attention that wasn't focused on him. The novelty wore off fast. That evening, Child Protective Services arrived. Victoria's heart stopped. We received a report, the social worker explained. An allegation that you're an unfit mother due to mental instability. Let me guess, Jennifer said, arriving within minutes of Victoria's panicked call. Richard Morrison filed it. I can't disclose. You don't have to. My client was assaulted by her husband while pregnant. She's cooperating fully with prosecution. Her daughters are thriving despite premature birth. What exactly suggests unfitness? The social worker observed Victoria with the twins, watched her careful attention to their feeding schedules, their medications. She interviewed the NICU nurses, who unanimously praised Victoria's devotion. I see no concerns here, she concluded. If anything, these babies are lucky to have such an attentive mother. Another victory, But Victoria was exhausted. The stress, the lack of sleep, the constant vigilance, it was taking its toll. "You need to rest," Sarah insisted. "The girls need you healthy." But rest was impossible when Richard kept escalating. His company's stock price had cratered. The board had not only removed him as CEO, but was pursuing legal action for financial misconduct. His assets were frozen pending investigation. The man who'd once controlled millions now couldn't access his own bank accounts, and he blamed Victoria for all of it. "Your client needs to be careful," Detective Martinez warned Jennifer. "We've seen this pattern before. When abusers lose control, they often escalate to violence." Victoria heard the warning but couldn't focus on fear. Her daughters needed her present, not paranoid. Sophie had gained 3 ounces. Emma was off oxygen support. These tiny victories mattered more than Richard's rage. On day 10, both twins were stable enough to leave NICU. As Victoria signed discharge papers, her phone rang. "Don't leave the hospital," Jennifer said urgently. "Richard violated bail again. He was caught trying to break into my office, looking for documents. Police are searching for him now." Victoria looked at her daughters, finally free of wires and tubes, ready to go home. Home to Helen's guest suite, because their actual home was still a crime scene. Ready to start a life without their father, because he'd chosen revenge over redemption. "We'll wait," she told Jennifer. "But not for long. These girls have waited long enough to start living." Security escorted them out a side entrance 2 hours later, after Richard was found and arrested at a bar 6 blocks away. As Helen's car pulled away from the hospital, Victoria looked back once. Somewhere in the city, their father sat in a jail cell of his own making. But here in this car, Sophie and Emma slept peacefully, unaware of the drama surrounding their birth. "Welcome to the world, my loves," Victoria whispered. "I promise it gets better from here." 4 months after that terrible night, Victoria entered the Manhattan Criminal Court building, flanked by Jennifer and Sarah. The twins were safe with Maria and Helen, but Victoria felt their absence like a physical ache. She'd barely been apart from them since their birth. "Remember," Jennifer coached as they walked, "answer only what's asked. Don't elaborate. Don't get emotional. Let the evidence speak." The courtroom was packed. Media, Morrison Tech board members, Manhattan society wives who'd once called Victoria friend. She recognized Cecily from the doctor's office, no longer smirking. Richard sat at the defense table in a bespoke suit that couldn't hide his deterioration. The months in jail had aged him. His hair, once perfectly styled, was thinning. His designer stubble had become an unkempt beard, but his eyes still held that familiar rage when they met hers. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Winters. Judge Winters was known for being tough but fair. Victoria had researched her extensively, a former prosecutor who'd specialized in domestic violence cases. "The People versus Richard Morrison," the clerk announced. "Charges include assault in the second degree, criminal contempt for violating an order of protection, and harassment in the first degree." The prosecutor, Ada Michael Chang, laid out the case methodically. "Your Honor, we will show that on the night of March 15th, the defendant, Richard Morrison, struck his 7 months pregnant wife, causing her to fall. This was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of years of escalating abuse." Richard's lawyer, Albert Kellerman, stood. "Your Honor, my client is a respected businessman who made one mistake during a stressful time. This is a case of a bitter divorce being criminalized by a vindictive spouse seeking financial gain." "Save it for your opening statement, Counselor," Judge Winters said dryly. Victoria was the first witness called. She walked to the stand on steady legs, raising her right hand to swear the oath. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. After 16 years of lies, it felt like freedom. "Mrs. Morrison," Ada Chang began, "can you tell us what happened on March 15th? Victoria spoke clearly, describing the argument, the slap, the fall. She kept her voice neutral, letting the facts speak. "How did you feel when the defendant struck you?" "Terrified, not just for myself, but for my babies. I was 7 months pregnant with twins. Had the defendant ever struck you before? Not with his hand, but he'd thrown things, shoved me, grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises. Kellerman's cross-examination was brutal. Mrs. Morrison, isn't it true you're seeking $50 million in your divorce? I'm seeking a fair settlement after 16 years of marriage. But $50 million would certainly solve your financial problems. Wouldn't it? Jennifer had prepared her for this. Mr. Kellerman, I had a Harvard MBA and a promising career when I met your client. I gave that up at his insistence. Any financial problems I have are because I trusted my husband to be fair. You claim he was controlling, yet you lived in a $10 million penthouse, wore designer clothes, attended charity galas. Does that sound like control to you? It sounds like a golden cage, Victoria replied. Every purchase required his approval. Every social event was one he chose. I needed permission to have lunch with my own sister. Or perhaps you're simply rewriting history to support your narrative. Objection, Ada Chang called. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on. Counselor, Maria testified next, her worn notebook in hand. She detailed incident after incident, her accented English growing stronger with each word. He threw glass at her when she's 6 months pregnant, Maria said firmly. I see everything. I cleaned the blood when she cut her feet on the pieces. You work for Mrs. Morrison, correct? Kellerman pressed. She's your employer. She my friend, Maria corrected. She sponsor my green card, help my family. But I no lie for nobody. I tell truth. Maria played the recordings she'd made. Richard's voice filled the courtroom, ugly and threatening. Several jury members visibly recoiled. Ellen Carpenter took the stand next, elegant and composed. I was married to Richard Morrison for 7 years, she stated. The pattern was identical. Charm, then control, then violence. Your Honor, Kellerman objected, previous allegations are not relevant. They go to pattern of behavior. Judge Winters ruled, I'll allow it. Ellen described her marriage with clinical detachment, the financial control, the isolation, the escalating violence. The night I left, he'd hit me while I was holding our son. I realized if I stayed, I'd be teaching James that was acceptable. You signed an NDA as part of your divorce, didn't you? Kellerman asked. Yes. Richard's money bought my silence for 20 years. But when I learned he'd hit another pregnant woman, I couldn't stay quiet. The forensic evidence was damning. Security footage from the building showed Richard shoving Victoria after multiple events. The emergency room photos displayed her bruised face, swollen and purple. The 911 call played, Maria's terrified voice begging for help. Then came the character witnesses. Helen Walker commanded the courtroom's attention. I've known Richard Morrison for 20 years. I was his first investor. I've also watched him systematically destroy 2 wives. Victoria Chen was a brilliant, vibrant woman when they met. He dimmed that light year by year. You're biased, Kellerman suggested. Victoria's living in your home. You're damn right I'm biased, Helen shot back. I'm biased toward women who find the courage to leave abusive men. I'm biased toward protecting pregnant women from violence. If that's bias, I'll own it proudly. On day 3, Richard took the stand. Jennifer leaned over to Victoria. Watch this. He can't help himself. Richard started controlled, painting himself as a stressed businessman who'd made one mistake. But Ada Chang knew how to push his buttons. Mr. Morrison, you claim this was one moment of lost control? How do you explain the security footage from the previous incidents? Those were misunderstandings. Victoria is clumsy, so she repeatedly fell into your hands. Don't twist my words, Richard snapped. I'm using your words. Mr. Morrison, you said your pregnant wife was clumsy. Is that why she had bruises shaped like fingers on her arms? She bruises easily. Some women do. It's not my fault she's fragile. Victoria saw several jury members exchange glances at that. Let's talk about the night in question. You'd lost $50 million. The deal fell through because Richard's face reddened. Because of circumstances? What circumstances? Market volatility. Not because you'd gambled away the investment capital. Objection, Kellerman called. Goes to state of mind. Your Honor, Chang argued. I'll allow it. Richard's composure cracked. That's a lie. Victoria's been poisoning people against me, spreading these rumors. So the casino receipts are lies. The cryptocurrency losses. You don't understand business. Richard exploded. It was investment, not gambling, but she wouldn't understand that. She's just a housewife who trapped me with babies. The courtroom went silent. Even Kellerman winced. Mr. Morrison, Judge Winters said coldly, control yourself. But Richard was beyond control now. This is persecution. I'm a successful businessman being destroyed by a vindictive woman who saw her meal ticket disappearing. She planned this, got pregnant to trap me, then cried abuse to cash out. Mr. Morrison, his lawyer tried. Shut up. Richard turned on him. You're useless, just like everyone else. My wife, my board, my lawyers, all of you conspiring against me. Judge Winters had heard enough. Mr. Kellerman, control your client or I'll have him removed. It took a recess and presumably strong words from Kellerman to calm Richard down. But the damage was done. The jury had seen the real Richard Morrison entitled, explosive, and completely without remorse. Closing arguments were straightforward. Ada Chang presented the clear pattern of escalating abuse culminating in assault on a pregnant woman. Kellerman tried to paint it as an isolated incident, blown out of proportion by a greedy spouse. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. On the count of assault in the second degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of criminal contempt, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of harassment in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling 16 years of tension release. Behind her, she heard Helen whisper, "Thank God." Richard erupted. "This is injustice. You've all been fooled by her. She's nothing without me." Nothing. Court officers restrained him as Judge Winters set sentencing for the following month. As they led him away, still ranting, Richard locked eyes with Victoria one last time. "You'll regret this," he mouthed. She stood, shoulders straight, and mouth back. "No, I won't." Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Jennifer had prepared a statement, but Victoria decided to speak for herself. "Domestic violence thrives in silence," she said clearly. "For 16 years, I stayed quiet, made excuses, hid the truth. Today, that silence ends. If you're in a similar situation, please know it's not your fault. You deserve better. And with help, you can escape." "What's next for you?" a reporter called. Victoria thought of Sophie and Emma, waiting at home, of the new job she'd accepted at Mount Sinai's development office, of the small apartment in Brooklyn she'd put a deposit on, of the life stretching ahead, free from fear. "What's next? Everything I postponed for 16 years. I'm going to raise my daughters to be strong, independent women. I'm going to rebuild my career. Most importantly, I'm going to remember who I was before I forgot myself." As they walked away, Sarah linked her arm through Victoria's. "Mom and Dad are so proud. They're flying in for the sentencing. I can't wait to see them." Victoria meant it. She'd hidden from her family for so long, ashamed of what her life had become. That evening, holding her daughters, Victoria felt the last of her old life fall away. Richard Morrison had been found guilty. He would serve time. He would pay restitution. Most importantly, he could never hurt them again. "Your mama did it," she whispered to the sleeping twins. "We're really free now." Sophie stirred, tiny hand grasping Victoria's finger. Emma yawned, perfect rosebud mouth opening wide. They were 4 months old now, healthy despite their early arrival, completely unaware of the battle fought for their safety. And that's how Victoria intended to keep it. 6 months after the verdict, Victoria stood in her Brooklyn brownstone, watching morning light stream through windows she'd chosen herself. The space was modest compared to the Manhattan penthouse 2 bedrooms. A small garden, original hardwood floors that creaked. It was perfect. Mama, mama, Sophie's babbling echoed from the nursery, followed by Emma's answering coos. At 10 months old, the twins were hitting every milestone with determination. Good morning, my loves. Victoria lifted them from their cribs, marveling as always at their weight in her arms. Sophie, now a sturdy 18 pounds, had her father's dark hair, but Victoria's smile. Emma, smaller but fierce, had developed a laugh that could light up any room. The doorbell rang as she was preparing their morning bottles. Maria's voice carried through the intercom. Senora Victoria, I bring breakfast. Maria had stayed on, refusing to accept her full salary. You family now, she'd insisted. Family no pay, family too much. They'd compromised on a fair wage plus the basement apartment, which Maria had transformed into a cozy home. Any word from the lawyers? Maria asked, unpacking homemade congee and fresh fruit. The settlement finalized yesterday. Victoria still couldn't quite believe it. $50 million. The prenup thrown out due to the abuse. Richard fought it until the end. But the offshore accounts were the final nail. Securities fraud. Tax evasion, he's looking at federal charges now on top of the state conviction. Richard was serving 18 months for assault, with another 5 to 7 years potential on the financial crimes. His legal team had abandoned him when the money ran out. Morrison Tech had been sold for parts, the employees absorbed by competitors. The empire he'd built on ego and lies had crumbled completely. You okay, Senora? Victoria considered the question. You know what I am. For the first time in 17 years, I'm actually okay. Her phone buzzed with a text from Helen. Board meeting at 2. Don't be late. Partner. 6 months ago, Helen had proposed a radical idea. Let's start our own firm, Walker and Chen Ventures. We'll invest in women-led startups, help them avoid the Richard Morrisons of the world. Victoria had hesitated. I've been out of finance for 16 years. You ran a multi-million-dollar foundation. You understand numbers, people and bulls, to detection. That's 90% of venture capital right there. They'd started small, but word spread quickly. Women entrepreneurs, tired of being dismissed or propositioned by male VCs, flocked to them. Their first investment, a biotech startup founded by a single mother, had just closed a Series B round at triple their initial valuation. Aunt Sarah's here, Victoria called as her sister's car pulled up outside. Sarah bounded in, still in her hospital scrubs. Sorry I'm late. Surgery ran over. How are my favorite nieces? The twins reached for her eagerly, Sophie babbling sa-sa, while Emma blew raspberries. They're perfect, growing too fast. Emma's about to walk any day now. Competitive little thing. Isn't she can't let big sister do anything first? They settled in the living room, twins playing on a mat Helen had gifted organic cotton, naturally. How was the session yesterday? Sarah asked carefully. Victoria had been seeing Dr. Kemp twice weekly since the trial. Unpacking 16 years of gaslighting and control took time. Good, hard. We talked about forgiveness. Please tell me she's not suggesting you forgive Richard. No, forgiveness for myself, for staying so long, for not seeing the signs, for exposing the girls to him even in utero. Sarah's face softened. Vicky, you were surviving. You got out when you could. That's heroic, not shameful. I'm starting to believe that. Some days more than others. The Brownstones' doorbell rang again. Jennifer Kim entered with her usual brisk energy, though she'd become more friend than lawyer these days. Lady Victoria, I have news. Richard's lawyer contacted me. Victoria tensed. What does he want now? To sign away parental rights. Completely. No visitation, no contact, nothing. In exchange, he wants the child support reduced. The room went quiet except for the twins babbling. Victoria had known this was coming. Richard had shown zero interest in the girls beyond using them as pawns. Still, the finality of it hit hard. "Do it," she said firmly. "They deserve better than a father who sees them as bargaining chips. I'll draw up the papers." "Vicky, are you sure?" Victoria looked at her daughters. Sophie was trying to stack blocks while Emma attempted to steal them. Normal baby chaos. They'd never known their father's voice, his presence, his anger. They never would. "I've never been more sure of anything." That afternoon's board meeting was held at the new office, a converted Brooklyn warehouse with exposed brick in abundant light. Their team had grown to 12, all women who'd been overlooked or underestimated elsewhere. "Walker and Chen Ventures is officially profitable," Helen announced to Cheers. 6 months in, and we're already getting calls from institutional investors. They reviewed their portfolio, 7 companies so far, all woman-led, all thriving. The biotech startup, a sustainable fashion brand, an AI company focused on eliminating bias in hiring. "We're doing more than making money," Helen said, raising her green tea in a toast. "We're changing the game, proving women can build empires without stepping on others to get there." "To building differently," Victoria toasted back. After the meeting, she walked to Brooklyn Bridge Park, pushing the twins in their stroller. The Manhattan skyline glittered across the water, but she no longer felt its pull. That life, the charity galas, the society wives, the golden cage belonged to someone else. Victoria. She turned to find Patricia Wong approaching with her own toddler. "Patricia, how are you? Free?" Patricia laughed. "Finally divorced. Finally happy. I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For speaking up, for being brave. After your trial, I found the courage to leave my own situation. You saved more lives than just your own." They talked while their children played. 2 women who'd escaped similar prisons. Patricia was rebuilding too, working as a financial analyst, dating a kind pediatric nurse who'd never raised his voice in his life. "It gets easier," Patricia assured her. "The fear, the looking over your shoulder. One day you realize you've gone a whole week without thinking about them." Victoria hoped that was true. Richard still haunted her dreams sometimes, his voice telling her she was nothing without him. But the dreams came less frequently, replaced by plans for the future. That evening was the monthly support group she'd started. 15 women gathered in her living room, sharing stories and strength. The investment banker whose husband had hidden assets in cryptocurrency, the surgeon whose wife had sabotaged her career out of jealousy, the teacher whose partner had convinced her she was too stupid to leave. "The hardest part was believing I deserved better," one woman shared. "He told me for so long that I was lucky he put up with me." Victoria nodded, remembering that feeling. "They're master manipulators. They choose strong women, then spend years breaking us down. But look around this room. We're all here. We all got out. That's not luck, that's strength." After the group left, Victoria sat in her daughter's nursery, watching them sleep. The court date for Richard to sign away his rights was next week. He'd have to do it in person, in front of a judge, their last interaction. She wondered if she'd feel sad, if some part of her would mourn the family that might have been, but all she felt was relief. Richard had chosen his path rage over redemption, control over love. She'd chosen differently. Her phone lit up with messages. Sarah sending funny videos. Helen forwarding a promising business plan. Jennifer confirming lunch plans. Maria texting from downstairs about tomorrow's schedule. Her parents video calling from San Francisco, eager to see their granddaughters. This was her family now. Chosen, cherished, real. "You are loved," she whispered to her sleeping daughters, the same words she said every night. "You are safe. You are enough." A year ago, she'd been trapped in a penthouse prison, flinching at footsteps, measuring her words. Now she owned her own home, ran her own business, raised her own children without fear. She understood now that real wealth wasn't money, though financial independence certainly helped. Real wealth was freedom, the freedom to speak without calculating reactions, to make choices without seeking permission, to exist without apology. Richard had millions once, but he'd been the poorest man she'd known, bankrupt in all the ways that mattered. Victoria had lost a fortune in designer clothes and jewelry. She'd gained herself. Outside, Brooklyn settled into evening, families walking dogs, couples holding hands, children playing until the streetlights came on, ordinary life happening all around her. She'd spent so long thinking happiness required extraordinary things, wealth, status, perfection, but happiness, she'd learned, was in the ordinary. Bedtime stories and morning coffee, work that mattered and people who cared, the absence of fear and the presence of hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The business was growing faster than expected. The twins were developing distinct personalities that would need different approaches. Her own healing was ongoing, with setbacks and breakthroughs in equal measure. But tonight, in her modest brownstone with her sleeping daughters and chosen family, Victoria Chen was exactly where she belonged.